Will Campbell, first look at him. Oh, you saw. Oh no, I guess you hadn't really seen him in
I've
person.
never
We saw
seen
him at
him. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
both left the combine before he spoke. He wasn't at the Senior Bowl. You didn't go to the pro day. So Will Campbell in person for the first time. Your impressions?
Yeah. I mean, I was really impressed. I understand there's going to be more challenges ahead for him. I mean, bigger challenges certainly than what we saw out there today. Doug Marrone at one point was rushing over Will Campbell's edge. So that's where we're at a practice like this. And I think we're going to say it a million times throughout the course of this 30 minutes that it's rookie minicamp where they're not in pads and it's basically OTA tempo, right? Like this is not real football, and we're all aware of that. But similarly to like when you go to a pro day or the combine and you were to evaluate a lineman, you can see how a lineman gets out of his stance, how explosive he is, on the move, how he's able to generate power and pop, coming out of his hands and jolt out of his hands. And I just thought that watching Will Campbell, even hitting pads and hitting teammates holding those pads up and giving him a target, you could see his ability to really unlock his hips, roll his hips, generate contact through the ground up, and then finish with his hands. And there were a couple of times where he had his teammates on skates and he had to almost pull up, right, and not put those guys on the ground. So you see that raw power, that strength, that explosiveness. That's all good and exactly what you want to see. So I really I watched him hit blocking pads for more time than I would like to admit, and I was really enjoying it.
That's an underside. I was with you at that point. You were pretty giddy, but no, when he hit that pad, I mean that thud echoed in the bubble there, the way it really didn't with other players. And the other thing, look, this shouldn't be notable, but it is notable because of the pre-draft coverage. He was at left tackle. Will Campbell's at left tackle all day. And on Jared Wilson, Mike Vrabel did say there might be some cross-training down the road. But if you thought there was any question about where they're going to start him off and what their plan is for him, he's the left tackle.
Yeah, he was at left tackle the whole time. Did some kick out blocks, which is probably one of his best in the run game, I would say, in terms of what blocks he's really good at. And he was able to really, you could see it. You could see how those reps are going to translate into game film. And one of the things that a lot of people that you speak to about Will Campbell say is that he practices extremely hard and he sets a really good tone on the practice field with how intense and how he takes every rep like a game rep. And this was rookie minicamp on May 9th. And I don't think you would know the difference from Will Campbell on May 9th to September 9th or December 9th or January 9th or whatever the case may be. So that was exciting to see. And I'm really, I've been excited about him since even before they drafted him, but everything that you hear and everything that you see with him, it really sort of cements that pick more and more. Now, he wasn't pass protecting very much against any sort of competition. We'll see what the length and all that stuff comes up in pass pro, but the run blocking, I think, is going to translate really nicely.
Yeah, the motor was there. They weren't really using whistles. The coaches were just kind of yelling whistle. And when Will Campbell was up, it was whistle, 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 like 3 or 4 times before he let up on the block. So far, so good for him. Again, like it's one non-padded practice.
Oh, yeah.
We're not sitting here telling you he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but certainly liked what you saw early on from him there. Just some of the other draft picks. I guess we can go in order here. Tayvon Henderson. What did you make of Tayvon Henderson not being at practice?
Yeah, I hate to speculate. We don't know, right? We have no idea why he wasn't at practice. It could be a million different things. Obviously the Patriots announced this afternoon that they signed 8 of their 11 draft picks. Will Campbell wasn't one of them. He was out there. Tayvon Henderson wasn't one of them. He wasn't out there, right? So I don't know if it was contract related. That would be my initial instinct, but again, that's pure speculation, and who knows. But it is worth saying that in terms of negotiations for rookie contracts, first and second round picks have the most say and have the most bargaining power, let's call it, just based off of guaranteed money, cash flow, those types of things. Jaden Higgins got a fully guaranteed deal as a second round pick. And that I believe in Houston, right? Yeah, in Houston.
Yeah.
And that when those types of things happen, now all 31 guys that were drafted in the second round are going to want guaranteed deals. Yeah, that's just the way that goes. So did Houston set a precedent there? Potentially. And maybe we'll see if that impacts Tayvon Henderson.
So we'll see what happens there. And I wouldn't, whether it's him, Campbell, and I think Craig Woodson was the other one who didn't sign, right? I think Christian Barmore signed his rookie deal like the week before training camp. So they have time to get that all figured out. But he was the one player not there. Kyle Williams who's the second highest draft pick that was in attendance. Made some nice plays. I don't think he quite had the volume that some other guys did, but made a nice play coming back for a ball on a throw that was high up the sideline late in practice. There was another play. I thought he was open deep and the quarterback just didn't throw to him. The receivers didn't get a ton of help from the quarterbacks in this one, but I liked what I saw. Again, very minimal, but I liked what I saw from him.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching him pretty up close at one point, just going through the positional drills and the footwork. And we've seen a lot of receivers come through here at this point, and there aren't a ton of guys that got the rapid feet like he does. Like you can definitely see the quickness and the foot fire ability, and just all around just having that ability to get through those drills really smoothly. So that's exciting. You mentioned the catch, towards the end of practice, that little comebacker that he ran where gets both feet down, catches the ball away from his frame. That was one of the things that they actually coached him up on, I thought, was just, you can see it on his college tape, and that's double catching the ball sometimes. He will have some issues there. He has some issues with drops last year at Washington State as well. So that remains a little bit of a work in progress. But in terms of the movement skills, there's absolutely a lot to be excited about with Kyle Williams. And Bob Douglas has a little bit of that too, but he was a 6th round pick, right? It wasn't exactly the same sort of thing. I just think that his quickness and his overall fluidity as an athlete is not something that I necessarily saw early on with Tyquan or Jalen Polk or some of these other guys. And I know it's easy to just sit here and talk about guys that didn't live up to the draft status, all the way. But that's just all we can go off of. And I thought Kyle Williams, looks the part of the type of receiver. He's not big. We both talked about that a little bit as well during practice, but that's not what he was touted as, right? Like no one was expecting him to come in here and look like he was Des Bryant. Like this is the type of receiver that you drafted. So I was box checked, right? Like he looked the part of what you thought you were going to get with him.
I'll say the other thing with him, and this is maybe just because there weren't that many players out there, and we'll see what it looks like, OTAs in a couple weeks once the majority of the roster is there. But he spent a good amount of time with Josh McDaniels, kind of like you'd expect to see a quarterback around the offensive coordinator quite a bit. There were a few times, it wasn't the whole practice, but there were a few times because you're looking at where the coaches are, and I was like, all right, there's Josh McDaniels. Who's he talking to? Oh, it's Kyle Williams. So, the line stayed on their own pretty much the whole time. Tayvon Henderson wasn't out there. So if you talk about draft picks for Josh, like Kyle Williams is kind of the top player that Josh McDaniels is looking at in a setting like this. Again, Will Campbell, Jared Wilson, the offensive line for 90% of practice were doing their own thing. They weren't with everybody else. So who's McDaniels working with? Tayvon Henderson's not out there. It is Kyle Williams. So maybe that's part of it. But those two were talking quite a bit. Let's talk about Jared Wilson. Like Will Campbell, some questions about where he might play. Does he have some left guard flexibility? Mike Vrabel said before practice, they want him to learn left guard. Eventually, they want all the interior guys to know all three spots, but they don't want to overload him. So to start, he is working at center, spent the majority of the day there. It does feel like that's where they want to develop him primarily, which I think speaks to something that we talked about on Catch 22 on Patriots.com this week, that he's going to push Garrett Bradbury for that starting job. And I don't think it's something that they're going to wait to maybe start that competition. If they feel Jared Wilson's ready, they're going to open that thing up.
Yeah, we talked to him too after practice, and you see a pretty mature kid. It seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders, and that's what you want out of center. It's going to be a mentally taxing position. You got to be a pretty smart football player and be a pro. Willing to prepare, willing to watch film. All that kind of stuff to understand the fronts you're going to see, the pressure packages you're going to see. So there's a lot of that on that position as well that I think about in terms of a rookie, right? Is he going to be able to be ready to do all of that kind of stuff right out of the gate? Physically, I thought that he pretty much looked like I expected, moved like I expected, good athlete, really wide bodied, which is something that I like about him in particular, especially if you're going to play on the interior. We talk a lot about wingspan and stuff like that with Will Campbell, but I don't know if it necessarily matters quite as much when you're out on an island, whereas when you're inside, you want to take up more space and you want to clog, more lanes and things like that at center, especially if you're not going to be covered. So I think that he's got the build of a center, looks the part of an athletic, center. And he talked about that a little bit, that he likes that. He likes getting out of his stance. He likes being uncovered so that he can just, fly up to the second level or get out in front of outside zone or a toss play or something like that. And you can definitely use, just schematically, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do when you have a center that's a really good athlete. And I think that's what they're kind of going for here.